What role does a commissioner play in ensuring that the office of sheriff is held accountable?
Well, that's a great question. Actually, the commissioners are directly tied to anything to do with any county government, county contracts, county employees. So when it comes to, say, a county employee that wants to get their contract changed to include more ghost employment, that goes immediately through the commissioners and they have to sign off on it. Also, when they do handle things like county contracts, when it comes to a government entity, they are responsible for ensuring that that money is spent efficiently and effectively for what it was supposed to be spent for that contract, to make sure that the services are being provided. I would have to say that that's been lacking for a little bit.
It sounds like commissioner roles really serve as kind of a watchdog for
Yes.
taxpayer money,
Yes.
taxpayer
The
funded
commissioners
agreements.
are the executive branch of county government.
Yep. So can you elaborate a little bit on that and what, so, for the average person who maybe hasn't been involved and then has seen these scandals and is now suddenly really observant about what's happening this election year, when they're electing a county commissioner, what are they electing? What job are they filling?
Okay, they're wanting, how do I put this? So, like I said, the county commissioners are in charge of any kind of county contracts, any kind of county employment, and oversight of county entities, like I said, such as the sheriff's department. They also have a lot to do with zoning and planning out in the county. They have a lot to do with maintenance of county roads, maintaining the landfill. There are a lot of different facets that go into a county commissioner, including ordinances.
Absolutely. You've mentioned something that is particularly pertinent to me and the residents of Charlestown, but also to some people who use County Road 403 as a pass-through between Charlestown and Sellersburg, which is a pretty heavily traveled road. And I'm curious how you see the role as county commissioner in working with those units of government. So the territory along County Road 403, some of it considered county, some of it's considered city. The vast majority of it's considered city. Yeah. So I have a lot of residents and subdivisions that have popped up along that road, yet I have no money, no resources, no ability to make any improvements on that road. And we've had a string of horrible accidents that have been well documented, including a fatality again last week. So if you were elected as county commissioner, what role do you see playing in those types of situations where another unit of government is also involved in bringing a better quality of life and enhancements for our residents?
Yeah, well, I definitely want to work with the municipalities to find out exactly what the problems are and what their ideas are for trying to rectify the situation. In this situation, I'm somewhat familiar with this road. I'm familiar with the road, I'm familiar with the fatalities, but I'm not quite sure on a course of action at the moment. Obviously, there are studies that need to be done. I understand that you have actually performed one of those studies to help out the commissioners in the past, so I'd love to take a look at that. But yeah, definitely collaboration and working with the municipalities is exactly what's needed to be able to get all these things pushed through to help our community.
Trust is something that we've talked about before, and protocol and governance and transparency and rules. I don't know if you know this, but when I first became mayor in 2020, one of the first visits I had from another local elected official was from the county commissioners. And it was my understanding going into that meeting that had been set up by the county engineer at the time, that this was just a meet and greet between me and maybe one of the commissioners. So I was excited. Okay, sure, let's get government working together, right? And I walked into the conference room for this meeting, and there sat all three county commissioners, Jack Kaufman, Brian Glover, Connie Sellers, who is your direct opponent.
Yes.
Their attorney, and their engineer.
Not intimidating at all.
I didn't have my attorney with me. I had no idea what the context was because I felt like the meeting had been set up under a different kind of scenario. But most notably is when you have at least two county commissioners in a room together listening to or conducting business, that constitutes a quorum. So what would be your response to that kind of situation? If you were called up by another county commissioner and they said, hey, we need to go meet with the mayor of Charlestown and have this meeting, and we haven't posted any open door notice that we're having a meeting, what would be your response in that situation where you're put under that scrutiny?
Well, that I would definitely say needs to be a public meeting, especially if there's a quorum involved. So I would probably decline the invitation and insist that it be held in a public forum.
So along those lines of trust, and you've mentioned contracts, that's your role in the contract. There's a particular contract that has been very newsworthy. EMS throughout the county has been impacted significantly by the scandal involving Jamie Knoll and New Chapel. What is your plan in this moment to ensure that our residents have top quality care and emergency response?
Well, I have to say that looking back at the history, over the decades, we have been failed miserably by private entities. So now is the time that we need to move forward a county government-run EMS system to ensure that we are able to meet the needs that our community obviously is needing, but at the same token, it gives a little more accountability to the people. It gives everything back to the people. They can make a direct complaint. If something goes wrong, it can immediately be addressed within the government system rather than going to the government system, then having to go through the bureaucracy of talking to the private agency, finding reports. This will be able to make sure that the problems are addressed immediately.
It sounds like you're wanting to return control of the resources back to the people.
That's exactly correct.
What have you been doing? A little birdie told me that you've been sneaking around a little and talking to some people to get the inside scoop on the current situation and the real needs on the ground. So what have you been doing to prepare for this?
Yeah, I've talked to several paramedics, a lot of the local fire chiefs, and I've actually spoken with my father, which many people don't know was instrumental in, well, actually he was well, I'll just stick with instrumental. I can't think of words right now. He was instrumental in helping to start Louisville EMS. Not quite single-handedly, but a lot of the burden came to him. He's still around. I still talk to him on a daily basis, and we have been shooting ideas back and forth because he's obviously directly done this, so he knows exactly the path that I need to go down to make this a reality.
Yeah, it sounds like you're really doing your research on that, and I think that's so important. It's not like you just decided to throw your name on a ballot and run, Katie. It sounds like you're really working on informing yourself, learning, educating yourself comprehensively about what to do when you get in there. Yeah,
I definitely want to help the county. The county has been, for lack of better words, a bit of a mess for a while, and I kept complaining. My wonderful husband got to listen to me over and over complain about how somebody needs to do something to fix this. And one day I just decided, I'm somebody. Maybe I can give it a try.
And so that's how I ended up being mayor. I mean, but I think that there's a power there and there's a significance there in that we are not people who were raised with a pathway towards political office. We didn't dream of being politicians. This was not on our bucket list. We're just average, everyday Clark County residents who saw corruption, got fed up, and said, instead of sitting on the sidelines, I'm smart, I'm capable, I have life skills. And these government positions, they were created for the everyday person. That's who I am. And so you just stepped in and said, I'm going to give this a shot. But while you've been doing it, you've been really preparing behind the scenes.
Oh, yes.
One of the issues that I see popping up pretty frequently online, and this one's really controversial, and so I'm just giving you a heads up.
Okay.
This one's tough. Because I think when you're talking about EMS or a corrupt sheriff, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to wait their tax dollars wasted or stolen.
Right.
And everybody wants to know that when they call an ambulance, they're going to get quick service and medical attention. This one's a little bit more tough. So a topic that has been popular on local media, in the newspaper, and also all over Facebook, and even as you drive through the county, is the concept of solar farming on agricultural land. How do you balance the concerns of neighbors with the private property rights of farmers or former farmers who want to enter leases with solar companies on their land?
Well, first, I would like to say that I definitely think that there's a need for looking into green initiatives throughout the county. We definitely need to start moving into that realm, and there are many different facets. We don't have to just stick with solar. that being said, I am a big proponent for personal property rights, as long as they do not infringe upon the rights of their neighbors. So I'm currently talking with the opposition to find out exactly what their concerns are to make sure their rights aren't actually being violated.
Great. So you've been in direct contact with some of the people who are anti-solar and listening to them. I'm assuming that you're following up on some research from that, on claims they've made. Would you be open to go and meeting with some of the farmers or people that own this land and saying, hey, this is what it would look like, this is where it would go?
Most definitely.
Okay, wonderful. I think that that's critical, is to hear both sides. Sounds like you have a very reasonable approach to at least working through that muddy issue. I want to make sure that we're not missing any big topics, but one of the issues, or one of the opportunities that Clark County has had, is that through the ARPA money that came down from the Biden administration into the state, they were able to create this READY grant process, where they had millions of dollars to give away to regions, and they're actually repeating that with state money now from a surplus of state funds. And so Clark County has benefited from this regional allocation of funds. Charlestown has benefited, other local communities, the county itself, we've all benefited from that. But it's a regional initiative, so it's not just Clark County. It's a 5-county region comprising Clark, Floyd, Jefferson, Scott, and Washington counties. So regionalism is a concept that's really being advocated for from the state level and even from the federal level on down, as we begin to realize that boundaries blur, and that the people who are living in Charlestown might not work in Charlestown, people who work in Charlestown might not live in Charlestown, and that we visit each other's communities and even other counties frequently. I happen to know a really good Thai restaurant in Washington County up in Salem, if you ever
I do too.
want one. So, along those lines, what does regionalism mean to you, and what would be your approach to practicing that to ensure that our county continues to receive opportunities like this?
Well, regionalism to me means collaboration between the different counties, the different communities. And honestly, I'm very glad to see this happening. Growing up here, it was a very tribalistic area. It was town against town, county against county, and it made no sense. And they were fighting against each other. When we all work together, we can lift everyone up.
That's great. I like hearing that as mayor, trust me. I don't want to miss anything. These are kind of some things that are really big in the media, but I want to leave space for you to, because you have been doing your research, and you were called, and motivated to run for office for other things besides the topics we've discussed. So what other issues do you think are being overshadowed by some of these larger stories that are really important for voters to know about this year?
Definitely the landfill is an issue.
Okay, can you explain?
Yes, the landfill has been woefully neglected for a very long time. There are certain federal mandated upgrades that were supposed to have been made that have not been made in a very long time. It's been over a decade that the slurry wall project has been in effect, and the slurry wall is still not complete. Several culverts have been shrunk, which makes no sense, which is causing drainage issues. But what's even more important than that is the effect on the taxpayer's pocketbook, because we are almost at capacity. And when we hit our maximum amount, it will be closed down, and taxpayers will then have to pay extra money to ship their trash to Louisville, to their resources.
That sounds like a huge mismanagement.
It is, and it definitely does not lend any credence to the fiscal conservatism that has been claimed was the reason for making these small incremental fixes rather than making the initial amount and getting these things fixed as needed.
So I certainly wasn't as aware of that. We in the city had actually stopped taking our trash to the landfill a while back because it was just a nightmare for many reasons.
Yes. And
we have actually saved money going with someone else to remove that for us because of the amount of damage that was being done to our vehicles and their lack of concern over that damage. So definitely. Are there any other issues that you think that we would need to be aware of?
Honestly, those are kind of the main ones at the moment, and that's the main issue that I can think of that most other people are not aware of.
Sounds like there's some trends. So it sounds like a large part of that, if the county commissioner's responsibility is to approve and manage contracts and oversee those contracts, it sounds like there's some mismanagement there, both through the EMS service provider and the landfill contracts. It sounds like one of the themes is a lack of regard for, or lack of respect even for taxpayer money.
Yes.
That we've seen assessment values rising, we've seen tax bills going up, and people want to know that their money is being spent wisely.
Right.
And it sounds like there's a theme that that's not happening.
It clearly has not been happening. For a very long time, the tax dollars have been completely wasted and, as you mentioned earlier, stolen because of lack of oversight, lack of transparency, and and that just lost it. That just went right out of my head. So sorry.
It's okay. I'm throwing things at you, and it's not like we sat and had a preview. So you're fine. It's fine. No, I'm just trying to make sure that for people that are here, and also for anyone who might watch any part of this later, that they understand that these are the issues that are very important.
Yes.
Because even though we might not think about the landfill on a day-to-day basis, especially those of us that don't drive up that way very often, right? Our property doesn't adjoin, the landfill. That may be so far off the radar that we're not even noticing it,
Yes.
right? But the theme coming out of that is the same theme of mismanagement that we have seen in the news through the disaster that has been the contract with New Chapel EMS and the corruption out of the former sheriff's office.
Yes,
So
exactly.
there were people who were supposed to be watching out for that, and they didn't. And they're asking us to reelect them.
Yes.
And you're saying not anymore.
No.
Good. Let's see. I had to keep notes because I didn't want to get lost in my own thought, because I
Like I just
tend to ramble. I get excited about talking to people about our county and government and Charlestown and residents and everything, so I didn't want to miss that opportunity to stay on track. Well, this is a no-brainer. I don't know why I had to have a note for this one. You've talked a lot about the problems that you've seen, and you talked a little bit about what motivated you to run. But what makes you qualified? Why are you the most qualified person to run against Connie in your district?
Okay. Actually, I began my career as an environmental scientist, so I understand environmental impact reports, risk assessment and mitigation. I know urban planning, rural planning. I have a very good grasp on things like that, which will come into place when it comes to the zoning and planning portion of my job. Also, as I stated, I grew up in an EMS household that was very instrumental in starting a citywide at the time, obviously now it's countywide since it's Louisville and Metro, but citywide EMS service, so that will help me, that will be instrumental for me with starting this here. And then I'm just a concerned citizen. I'm tired of seeing the corruption that honestly everybody has kind of known was going on for a very long time. There's been a lot of whispers. It's just now coming to sunlight, and it's time for a change.
Absolutely. I'm tempted to agree with you on that. If elected, what are your immediate and long-term goals?
Well, the immediate ones we've already discussed, which would be definitely EMS. That is a matter of life and death, so that needs to be addressed yesterday. The landfill, obviously, because I don't want to cost the taxpayers a ton of money, and transparency within government, because we do not want this happening ever again. Long term, which hopefully won't be too long, will be more along county roads and expansions and making sure things are working together on a collaborative level throughout all the municipalities of Clark County.
That's fantastic. If people see this or they're here today and they want to know what you need to get in that office, because a campaign is a long year.
Yes.
And it's getting closer and closer to crunch time, and actually going in and making that decision. If people agree with you and they like what you have to say and they see that you're the most qualified candidate and they want to support you, what can they do right now to support you and make sure you get elected?
Yeah, go to my website. It's KD4 Commissioner. It's the numeral 4. KD4commissioner.com. You can donate. You can spread the word. Tell all your friends and neighbors, anybody. If you support me, tell them you support me and tell them why. We've got plenty of opportunities. You can come up and talk to me whenever I'm out in public. I'm totally open to that. If anybody wants to march in a parade, I'm okay with that too. So really just, I'm willing to take any help anybody wants to give me.
And it's so simple to have those conversations. So many of us were raised that we didn't talk about politics, but I think when we look at the amount of fraud and corruption and misspending that our Clark County government has practiced in the past few decades,
Yes.
we have to talk about politics.
Communication is key.
I agree, absolutely. That's all the questions I had written for you as far as planning and kind of breaking the ice for the crowd here today, so they could hear what I see in you. And I'm a proud supporter of yours, and I look forward to casting my vote for you, and I look forward to having that collaboration between county and city government, because I think that not only the unincorporated areas around Charlestown will benefit from that, but also the residents of Charlestown. It's very important to me. So I want to thank you for that. At this time, we would open it up to anybody who has a question for Katie, and let her engage with you.
When Mayor Hodges asked you about your qualifications, you did not talk about all the leadership roles you have filled.
Yeah.
So I'd like to hear more about that, and I'd also like to know what you've observed of the way the current council conducts their business, and how you think it should be done differently to be more engaging of the public.
So the question then would be, just to rephrase and keep you focused, right? So the question is a two-part question. One, you've been called out by someone who happens to know apparently a little more about you that you didn't share with us and with the voters about your leadership role. So you need to talk about yourself in a way that is educational for the rest of us about your leadership roles. But then the second part of that question would be, what has been your direct observation of the way business is happening with the county commissioners, and what would you do to do it differently or better?
Definitely. Thank you, Amy, for that. I am the founder and executive director of VACA, which stands for Vulnerable Adult Care Advocates. We are a nonprofit business that's been around for 4 years now that helps the elderly with dementia when they don't have family members that are willing or able to help them with their healthcare and financial decisions. That definitely speaks a lot to my fiscal responsibility. Being able to keep a nonprofit afloat for 4 years is quite a task in and of itself. That also makes me a small business owner. I also am the regional champion for the Indiana Geriatric Society. I serve as a trustee for the LifeSpring Foundation, former vice president of Southern Indiana Pride. I wear a few other hats, but there's sometimes hard to remember.
That's fantastic. So it sounds like you've got direct leadership skills. I'm going to throw a curveball before you answer that second question about business, because you said something that I find particularly important, and I think very, very, very relevant this election year. You manage a nonprofit.
Yes.
There's a nonprofit that's been in trouble because of its leadership. What do you do as the creator and manager and owner of a nonprofit to make sure that you're being held accountable?
Well, luckily, I'm actually part of what's called the VASIA program for the state, which stands for, give me a second, Volunteer Advocates for Seniors and Incapacitated Adults. Very close.
Nice.
Thank you.
So many acronyms.
Yes, but that means that I have direct state oversight of all of my accounts. So everything is on the up and up. I constantly am publishing out yearly and annual reports. My 990 is up to date. Anybody can get any information they need whenever they need it.
So the residents of Clark County would know that you know what it looks like when a nonprofit is actually doing what it's supposed to do.
Yes.
Good. Now you can answer that second part of the question. What have you observed about the current business practices or meeting practices of the county commissioners that you think needs to be done differently and better?
Yeah. Well, I personally think that what they're doing right now is abysmal. What they do is they meet early in the morning for their executive sessions behind closed doors. They talk about everything that they want to accomplish and get done. And then when it's time for the public portion of the meeting that afternoon, they just rush through as quickly as possible, name out bills with numbers. Nobody has a clue what's actually happening. There's no discussion, and they just pass things through. I've seen commissioners' meetings literally take only 20 minutes. And I know there are several other people that I've seen at commissioner meetings too that have seen the exact same thing that I did and don't have a clue what they're talking about. They also don't televise or live stream any of them, and I think that's ridiculous as well. All the members of Clark County and all the residents in Clark County have the right to see what's happening and know exactly what's happening. And some of them can't make that there right at 5 o'clock because they have jobs.
Sure.
So I think that they should move it back to 6 p.m. so it gives more people an opportunity to actually be there. It should be live streamed, and the recording should be made available at any time on the websites. And there should be public discussion.
You're giving me flashbacks to why I ran for mayor, because it was almost the exact same situation in the city of Charlestown.
Yeah.
And I remember vividly going to a meeting of the Board of Public Works one time before I became mayor, and actually knowing less than I did when I walked through the door, because a contract was mentioned, and it didn't say what it was for, it didn't say what the amount was for, it just said, here's this contract from this vendor, we need to approve it, and they passed it unanimously with nothing.
Yes.
And the people in Charlestown, they were done with that. They spoke up. They said, we don't want that anymore. And I think the people in Clark County feel that same way. And we're just all so busy. You've got families with children. You've got people taking care of loved ones. People have full-time jobs. When they get home, they're tired. It's hard to make it to those meetings.
Yes.
And when I won mayor, we made everything video, live stream from day one. It was
Yes.
literally my cell phone up there for a long time until we hired a company to come in and do it. But by
That's perfect.
golly, it was out there for people.
Perfect.
And we publish all of our documents, and it's been great.
Yeah.
It's been great because our residents know what's happening, at least in the city government. So what I hear you saying is you want to see that happen at the county level too.
Exactly.
That's great.
Absolutely.
That's great. Other questions from the crowd? Yes, sir.
So I've got to relate to cover this, I apologize. As it relates to the Knoll scandal and the county commissioners, what they should have done in that context, what do you think happened or didn't happen that we should really know about?
So we're coming back around to the Knoll thing.
Yes.
We did talk about, that's
It's
okay, it's okay. This is a more nuanced version of that question. So this asks you to diagnose a little bit based on what you've seen and who you've talked to. Because I know you've been out in the county talking
Oh,
to
yeah.
people and you've done some research on all this. So
Yeah.
where do you think it went wrong?
The oversight was just lacking, plain and simple. There was supposed to be oversight by the council and the commissioners to ensure that all these contracts were being met, the money was being spent the way it was supposed to be. There was supposed to be biannual audits done. There's been no proof that any of these audits have been done in at least 8 years. So yeah, I would have to call out our current commissioners for not doing their job. They're derelict of their duty or complicit, one of the other.
Right, because I noticed that since the scrutiny really got on, the current sheriff actually did provide a report.
Yes.
Right, and I have to wonder, would he have done that without this kind of, oversight? I just don't think without the media attention that things would have changed.
Yeah.
And there again, it's still up to the county commissioners to make sure that they're asking for that report.
Yes.
That they're understanding what's happening. I mean, they can't even account for an entire year worth of funds from the sheriff's department.
Yes.
When the current commissioners were the commissioners then.
Yes.
And they cannot even find the reports.
That's exactly right.
Sad. Other questions from the crowd? Last call. We covered a lot of the heavy hitting topics.
We did.
We really have. Katie, I just want to thank you. I think obviously I'm a fan because I've had some rough experiences with our current commissioners. Meetings and strange offers and all kinds of weird stuff. And I knew we needed change. And when I saw that you were the candidate and I saw your qualifications, I knew you were the right one for the job. And
Thank
so I
you
want to
so
thank you
much.
for meeting everybody here. I want to encourage you now that kind of the formal interview